Well, the art itself is truly wonderful. It's got a really clear narrative. It's all about homes, but in this case, the refugees' homes are in particular Diane's grandmother and the rest of the family, starting from obviously the farmhouse in Poland, all the way through to the Gulag, to Uzbekistan, and then into the British Army camps in Persia, and then right down here to when it ended up in Tanganyika, as it was then called. It's really powerful because I work in politics, as you know, and the narratives at the moment are deeply troubling, negative. I think it was Gary Lineker that said a few weeks ago, it's like language of Germany in the 1930s, talking about swarms and invasions and dehumanising people who are fleeing for their lives. No other reason why they'd be coming. It gives me the energy and the power to go back to Parliament and really fight again.
It's very important to show people the true story of alive people. For me it is quite common because I'm also a refugee. I'm from Ukraine. We arrived in July 2022 with my husband, and we had to start everything from the bottom. It was totally emotionally and physically very tough to realize that you need to move to evacuate anywhere to save your life, to save your family, and you arrive to a foreign country and you don't know anybody here, you don't have anything here, you lost everything. You don't have home, you don't have job, networking, friends, relatives, and you are totally alone here. So it's very common for me, the feelings, the emotions which Diana Foster shared at this exhibition. It is really touchful and very close to my emotional stage, which I was feeling when I first arrived to Scotland. We need to speak about such stories, we need to show such stories, we need to show real facts, real pieces of art, how it really it looked historically, and how it was tough for our previous generations to live their safe and peaceful life. So I think such types of projects are really very important to spread them, not only for the adults but also for the teenagers, students, children. So they need to know their story, they need to be more empathetic, to show their compassion to the other people. When we arrived to Scotland, the first perhaps contact with the Scottish people was very warm, was very safe. We were very wondered how Scottish people welcome us. They are very friendly, they are very supportive and understanding. Everybody asks us how they can help us, any advices, any connections.
So I think in general what I've taken away from that is like keep on asking questions of why and how we do what we do and tell the stories that we tell and believe the stories that we are told.
When we first came to the project as international relations students, we had a very sort of fixed idea of what peace meant and what it looked like. And the project's about sort of trying to stretch that and the understanding that we have as academics, but also in the wider world what we think about peace. So I've sort of gone on to focus more on peace education, and particularly that's why I'm interested in this today, because I've looked at migration, forced migration through climate, sort of bringing that into education systems in Scotland and around the UK. So it's about, I said, stretching our understandings and looking at new ways of teaching what peace could be to sort of wider society. But yes, it's a really great project, and Dr. Koenig's an amazing teacher, so definitely keep up with her research. So I think it's a really important aspect to bring in, because I think art is a motive, as you said. It brings in how you feel about things and think about things, and I think there's a tendency within politics and within academia to look at peace as a very sort of objective thing. It can be achieved through treaties and law and all the other things, but actually art's a really important thing of sort of bringing it to the general public, making people think about it. And as you look at these pieces here, it brings out a lot of different thoughts to every single person who saw it. When we came here, we were having an argument about what actually the pieces meant. because it can mean so much different things to different people. So I think it's an extremely important part of peace and bringing that to sort of the general public in itself as well.
The fact that you get to connect with more people that exist beyond academia and that exist beyond, actual peace building processes maybe, or exist beyond just those confined spaces where we often talk about peace and forced migration and other things like that. I recently had an interesting conversation with an artist that does like a lot of music and art through music. Apologies. And like he said as well that you have a possibility to create so much emotions through art, kind of like what you just said, Harry, that you can like talk to the hearts of people in a completely different way that a policy paper cannot and that a newspaper article cannot do, which is quite fascinating ways to tell stories.
There are over 100 million people who are in search of somewhere to stay. That is over 100 million people. Beyond that number, there are people with hopes, aspirations, family and friends. People like me and you, people who want to do well, who want to be safe, who want to contribute and are in search of a home. 23 years ago, I was one of them. I arrived here in the UK in the back of a lorry from the conflict in Afghanistan. After several nights in a detention place in Dover, I was put on a bus, and the Home Office person who was just sort of like splitting us into different groups to be sent to different parts of the UK had a smile on her face and said, "You lots will be sent to Coventry." I think some of you will understand what that means, but it took me 2 years to work out what that meant. So perhaps maybe a lot less than the amount of time it took me to learn how to get on and off Coventry's ring road. That was a very, very difficult time and moment in my life. And life as a refugee is never easy. Nothing can replace what you've left behind. And when you arrive in a strange new world, the media sometimes will tell you that people are after our housing, our jobs and our prosperity. I came from a conflict in Afghanistan. We didn't have a housing system in Afghanistan, so I wasn't after housing. We didn't have a benefit system in Afghanistan, so I wasn't after benefit. We didn't have other social security in Afghanistan, so I wasn't after that too. I was after safety and protection, and also that decency, dignity and respect. But I ended up, like many others do nowadays as well, in an asylum system that was built to dehumanize me and bring my confidence and dignity further down. So again, as we gather here today, the same story that Diana took us through is still happening. There were talks of people being sent to East Africa. There are talks of people being sent to Rwanda. There are talks of denying people the right to seek protection. There were talks of, even at that time as well, people not welcome. So I think not much has changed in terms of our compassion, humanity. Sadly, the focus is very much on making life difficult for people. The 100 million people that I mentioned, not all of them want to come to the UK. Majority of people stay in the region, in neighboring countries. Out of the 6 million or so Syrian refugees, 4.5 million are internally displaced in Syria. When I became internally displaced with my family as a young man at that time in Afghanistan, we didn't want to cross an international border. We stayed in a refugee camp, counting days, weeks and months for a peaceful return to go and rebuild our life back in Kabul and our home that was destroyed by the civil war there. But life became unbearable. Life was difficult. There was no way. And I think for young people like me at that time, the only option was to flee Afghanistan and get to somewhere safe. I'm coming from a large family. I'm the only person here in the UK. Not everyone came here. So we don't receive all the world's refugees. I know some senior politicians will tell you we are invaded. There's no invasion. We don't have a refugee crisis. I think the only crisis, sadly, that we have is a crisis of compassion and also a crisis of language. There is power in stories. Numbers have divided us over generations. Even today, the numbers of net migration are divisive. But there is a connecting power in stories. And I think it's the stories that we need to tell. It's the narrative that we need to reclaim. I think each and every one of us, whether you're an academic, whether you're a student, whether you're working for the museum, or in whatever level of society you are at, we all have that role to play to reclaim that narrative, that these divisive policies of these are refugees, these are us and them and so on, these are not in our name. I think we all have so much to gain from a more cohesive society in which we empower and enable one another and not have that fear of the outsider or somebody arriving here. There's so much power in those stories, and I think sadly we're not telling them enough. And I think this exhibition is the beginning, and I hope that we continue to tell more stories and share them widely within our society and not allow the divisive policies and language that is being used to divide us further. So thank you very much.